is this tank still balanced in World of Tanks console? Has it been overhyped at the release, and how is it faring a couple of months into being released? Well, of course, today we're looking at the NM116, or the Panzerjäger, the Tier 8 tank destroyer from the American line on World of Tanks console. Yes, this was an original Cold War vehicle that then basically got re-released, but on the World War II version, with basically zero changes to this vehicle. Yes, it's a Cold War vehicle that got released on World War II without any changes, which means the penetration of this vehicle, which means the view range of the vehicle, which means the reload, it means the kind of camo of this vehicle. It is all related to that of which you would see on a Cold War vehicle. So there is basically... yeah, it's a little bit too strong on World of Tanks console, to say the least, and that is exactly what this video is going to showcase. And although we may have kind of ended up upside down, and luckily didn't lose any health, it's going to see how we can fare in this sort of gameplay. And of course we're going to now move over to the kind of hill areas or the sand dunes, because there's basically no one over here. There's a KV2. I don't want to get YOLO'd by that thing, because like 99% of your team definitely won't help you. So we're going to go over into the sand dunes, hopefully get some side shots on them, and hopefully spot for our team at the same time. So put a lovely one into the Tiger 1, really easy shots. The NM116 does it like pretty much naturally. It's a really snapshotty tank, and it's also able to kind of come around corners, deal damage, leave again, and also then relocate, because this vehicle is super fast. It's like ridiculously fast, to be honest. And so not only does it get concealment, camo, gun handling, DPM, speed, and all of those sorts of things. Of course, you can get then the spotting damage and get assistance damage from tracking people as well because of the reload. It's just basically got everything except from armor. That is literally the only thing this vehicle doesn't have. So and that's because it's basically a chaffy hole, but trust me, you do not need armor in this thing, because even if you come up against something, it's going to be able to pen you every single time. But trust me, you will be able to pen whatever it is that you're facing with this thing every single time as well. And this thing has like 4k DPM at tier 8, which is higher than any medium tank at tier 8, it's higher than any tank destroyer at tier 8. It's actually genuinely one of the most ridiculous things I think I've actually seen. And it is overpowered. This vehicle is still overpowered. It was overpowered when it got released. It was very strong on Cold War. So the fact that they release it on a game mode that wasn't meant for this sort of vehicle, yeah, I don't really know what Wargaming were doing, and it is just outrageously kind of good. And you can see here the reload speed. Remember, this does 280 damage, I think, on average, actually. So I lied there. 280 damage on average. Reloads in 4.5 seconds. Yes, 4.5 seconds. And yeah, it's unbelievable how quickly this thing can reload and deal damage, because ultimately you can put all of the boosts on. If you're using enhanced combat rations, you could see the reload 4.5 seconds there. And with the spotting damage that you can also do at the same time, you're able to have ridiculous games. And don't worry, it's a premium tank, so you earn a ridiculous amount of money at the same time as being able to stomp everyone and anything at this tier. So we spot the heavy tank there, the A43 Black Prince. Not like he's going to outspot us. And so we're going to go up into this position. We know that there's a T28 prototype and there's some other people over on this flank, so we're just basically trying to farm some damage. Unfortunately for the prototype, he doesn't quite have the DPM that this thing does, and so we can just rinse him. He obviously fired there to take out our teammate, and now we can just get the side shots on the prot and come away with a victory. I see that the enemy team are now kind of progressing on this flank, so I'm not really fancying being pumped by the AMX AC-48 if he decides to just YOLO in, which 99% of players on console seem to do. We take a bit of a high line here, get away from that tank there, and then it's time to try and finish off the A43 Black Prince, who is sat out in the town area, and unfortunately we don't manage to do that. And at this point, it's a case of trying not to get taken out, considering this tank has no armour. You don't want to be taking any rounds in this thing. You want to be taking ammo, but you don't want to be taking any hits. So we're going to avoid any damage possible that the enemy team can do. We've got a Panther who's decided he's just coming round the corner. Loaded a premium round there, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. No, we didn't. I lie. It's a PCR standard, of course, because why not give it like the best rounds in the game as standard, and then the premium rounds being ridiculous heat pen with like 300 mil of pen at tier 8, because why not give it like tier 10 tank destroyer pen on its premium rounds? I don't even know at this point, but this vehicle is ridiculous. Obviously artillery, loving the fact that we're playing in this game, because he can take us out really easily if he did manage to get some damage on us. And at this point I'm deciding, you know what, I don't really want to face a full health prot in close quarters combat along with an AMX AC-48. Our teammate gets taken out there with the VKM, who was on a one shot anyway, so the fact that we move is not really going to have affected him all too much, other than the fact of getting us both taken out if I stayed. So I'm going to move over into the hill area, hopefully get some spotting damage on people maybe who make a slight misplay, and then we can really farm them of the damage. Now, I could have potentially made a misplay by going up to this point, which I'm sure some people will come up with maybe in the comments, but at the end of the day, in this sort of scenario where you've done 4,500 damage in a tier 8 and done 922 assistance, I'm just trying to farm the rest of the damage in the game. And there is 5 tanks on the enemy team versus 2. I'm confident because we have a defender on the team, so it's not like it's a terrible like tier 6 or something that we'll have to carry 4. But hopefully he'll be able to help support us when I come up into this position. You'll see there that I get a little bit of annoyance with the engine deck of this thing, because you don't get the full depression all the way around, so you have to be a little bit careful. Now our teammate, I say to get in the cap. Unfortunately he doesn't get in the cap, but the enemy team do, and so there's one of them in the cap, and I know now, you know what, I need to get forward, because what happens if a second one gets in the cap, or a third one, or whatever happens in that sort of scenario. Now, considering my teammate is now in the cap, thankfully, we've got a tank destroyer here, the T-28 prototype. I'm behind a bush, I shouldn't get spotted, and we don't. So we hit him on the side, take him out of the game, and avoid the enemy team from being able to do anything. But I also then spot the enemy T-28 prototype, who is pushing towards the cap circle, so I want to make sure he doesn't ever get in there, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Our teammate then decides to leave the cap. I have no idea why. But yes, he does decide to leave the cap. I would have been very appreciative if he didn't, because that way our team could have basically pumped, or I could have pumped the enemy person who was in the cap circle. Unfortunately can't do that. The A43 Black Prince comes around. We miss the shot, which is super annoying. He does decide to actually stay, but we take him out quickly. I now realise that I need to get to the cap circle, because he's going to be capping out the game, and it is the AMX AC-48. I'm hoping I'll be able to get a shot into him. Unfortunately can't find one, and we're going to have to now try and take out the T-28 prot kind of on the move, and now we have to push towards the AMX AC-48 who's capping in the game. Going to move now forward. Can we get there in time? We've got 4 seconds left, and of course we're not going to be able to get there, and the cap circle is the winner of this game, of course, because how triggering it is when you do absolutely everything you possibly can, come top in the game on XP even though you lost, and you lose to an AMX AC-48 that probably shouldn't have won that game, but of course the cap circle is part of the game. he went in it, and I didn't get there quick enough. I should have reacted faster and then come away with a win. But the bloke on 800 damage and having done 2 shells of damage in that game ended up winning it for the enemy team. Would have been really, really helpful if the defender just stayed in the cap, because he was never getting back to defend anyway, and I could have then reset the base potentially, and so if I was going to say anything in that game, that would have been helpful. Not that I would have been able to get back anyway, but had I got back, we could have definitely won the game in that scenario. But nonetheless, a ridiculously good game, and we made 300,000 silver. I was running ×2 silver boosters, so even without the ×2, probably in the region of about 150,000 silver in one singular game on World War II. Yeah, very, very good amount of silver. But let's have a look at another replay, see if it was just a fluke or a one-off. Now then, this game, slightly different from the previous. The previous, we were top tier and we were carrying the game. What about when you are the bottom tier? Because, you know, probably, I don't know, 60% of your games are bottom tier, tier 8. So, can this thing still actually perform in tier 10 games? My answer is absolutely, and I actually prefer being in a tier 10 game in this tank than I do playing in a tier 8 game. And that's because there is so many more hit points for you to farm. I mean, imagine being in a tank 2 tiers lower, and the reason why you enjoy playing in those games is because you can farm tier 10s. Like, it's very rare that you play a tier, a vehicle that you actually prefer being in the lower tier, because you're able to do better in those games. This replay is going to showcase that you can still be very competitive up against those tier 10s, and because you have the DPM of tier 10 medium tanks, if they decide to YOLO you, or if they decide to just come at you, you can actually put them to shame, and that's what we're kind of doing within this game. Now, the AMX 1390 is kind of moving forward through the middle. I make a badly aimed shell there. Unfortunately, don't manage to hit him. Maybe we'll be able to push out some damage in a minute on him, but we'll have to wait and see. So, my key thing with the Panzerjäger, and why it is just so broken, is that DPM. Because if a player knows how to play this vehicle, and trust me, it doesn't take like a genius to work out how to play this vehicle, get yourself into a spot, remain undetected, and just keep firing, you can be outstandingly good against pretty much everything. You can see here we're hitting the AMX 1390 on the move because of the APCR rounds that we've got, because obviously APCR has a faster travel speed of the rounds, which means you're able to hit on the move easier. So if you've ever wondered in World of Tanks, you know what, how come when I'm shooting it's just like so far away from the opponent? It's usually down to your ammo type. If you've got AP, it's a slower round. If you've got heat, it's typically slightly faster than AP, typically, but that will obviously be very dependent on the tank. You can have a look in the detailed statistics page as to whether that's the case for the specific tank that you're playing, and it's just the ammo speed. And then the fastest being APCR. There are some variants of it. I think there's like APFDS or something like that. There's also loads of different things. And I think APFDS is armor piercing, fin stabilized, something like that. But yeah, there's loads of different types of ammunition. Just check out which one you've got, but generically APCR is the fastest, and which is why it's like the best when you're on the move, which is why it's the best when shooting at targets on the move, because you don't have to give such a big lead time, and therefore if someone makes a sudden turn, they've got less of a time to kind of do that in and avoid the shell that you might be firing. And I'm sure you've played probably something with a derp cannon and been like, why the hell has that just gone absolutely nowhere near the vehicle? It's usually because they can see the round coming and they actually move out of the way. Very rare that that happens, but sometimes it does, and you have to be wary of that. So in this game, pushed up pretty aggressively. I like this little spot to begin with. Obviously, it's very dependent on the right hand or the southern side of the map in the town area. If the enemy team have like fully pushed that area, this is not a good spot because you'll start getting lit up. If you're in a heavy tank, this is not a good spot. Just want to put that out there for you guys. But if you are in a medium, if you are in a tank destroyer, you can probably make this work at least to some degree. And you can see here the Grilla on the enemy team out in the open. We're going to go for the tracking shell on him, which we do manage to hit, and we get a little bit of extra assistance that we would have got. And then it's just a case of 12 versus 7 on the enemy team. So we're up by 5 tanks at this point. The enemy team are just not going to be able to win this, at least from what I can think. We try and put a shell into the lower plate of the KPZ, which doesn't happen, but it doesn't really matter because we're reloaded in 4.9 seconds. So yeah, the DPM is just outrageous, and I'm pretty sure it is actually in the region of like 4,000 DPM with all of the like boosts that can boost up your DPM. So you know, you can make of that what you will on a tier 8 kind of tank destroyer, and it's very effective DPM as well because of such a short reload. Allows you to retrack. It allows you to constantly pepper opponents and get multiple shells in, and I mean, because of the pen, you're never really kind of negated in having the damage because the penetration is so good to the point where opponents just cannot be able to reliably kind of get away from you, and they can't like bounce any rounds against you. So that's kind of where it comes in clutch. And you see there against Andre the Giant, the turret, the cupola, we're able to hit that as well. And then we're coming up against the TVP on the enemy team, and we put a nice one into him as well. So there's definitely room where we could potentially lose this game, and I am a little bit fearful. I don't want to waste any of my hit points because you never know, especially given the console players. So we're going to make sure that we just keep our hit points, or at least try to. The enemy KPZ comes up, we auto-aim him. I never recommend auto-aiming unless it's in that sort of scenario where even if you were to fully aim, you just wouldn't have actually fired. So that's really where auto-aim comes in and helps you out. At this point, there's a tank destroyer, there's a medium, there's another medium. Well, there's a tank destroyer and 4 mediums, one of them being the TVP there. And we try and go for the shot on the Grilla, but of course he does actually pre-aim us and now puts us on a one-shot. That was a bit of a terrible misplay from me. I should never peek a Grilla, to be honest. I'm lucky that I didn't just get ammo racked or some rubbish like that. But at this point, it's now against 4 medium tanks. Most of them are on low hit points, so we just have to be a little bit careful. Just don't go YOLOing in and try and get a little bit of extra damage within this game, because every single bit of damage gives us more silver, and of course hopefully gets us some extra kind of prestige, I don't even know, but a better game at the end of the day. Now, TVPT 5051 does actually go around. He's now a kind of a one-shot, I guess, or potentially a one-shot. If we do roll high, we don't, and we only do 260 to him, leaving him now on an official one-shot, and there's no real way he's going to be able to avoid the shell. Leopard 1 on the enemy team on full health because he's been camping in the back for the entirety of the game. Try and put a shell into the Chisel, which unfortunately doesn't actually pen because the Chisel's armor is just ridiculous, and we don't actually manage to deal any damage to the Leopard, but we do break his cupola or something like that. But at this point, the Leopard 1 wants nothing else but me for some reason, and we try and put in the last shell because we never know if he's going to just swing his turret. But unfortunately, you don't manage to pick up the final enemy hit within this game, but 3,500 damage in a tier 8 game. Yeah, pretty ridiculous. And this was not just a minute amount of games. This is like pretty much every game I've played it, and this vehicle has something like, on my personal account, like 3,500 damage on average every single game at tier 8. That's better than some of the tier 10 tanks I own, and this is just one of the most consistent high skill cap vehicles. So what I mean by that is that anyone that wants to, because some tanks will limit you, something like a T110E3 limits how well you can play in the game. The Panzerjäger doesn't, so there's a much larger kind of range of games that you can do really well in if you play correctly, whereas something like a T110E3, if you get like, I don't know, a Prokhorovka for example, there's nothing you can really do, at least like to have an insanely amazing game. You can still have good games on those, but they rely more upon the situation than you playing well. So the NM116 is a vehicle that relies upon the player, whereas something like a T110E3 relies upon the map or the enemy team or things like that. This tank is primarily governed by the skill level of the player playing it, which should be the case on World of Tanks console, but rarely is actually the case. So that's kind of where I'm at with this skill, with this tank, and I just think it's blatantly overpowered. And if anyone with any kind of level of skill gets in this thing, you're going to struggle, because it not only does it outspot you, stay undetected, has DPM of a tier 10 medium tank, and also can move about the map at like 70 kilometers an hour. It's just a tier 8 vehicle that is actually a tier 9 that shouldn't be in the game, but it is. And of course Wargaming thought it was balanced at the time, but yes, it's still not balanced now at this point in time. So hopefully it gave you a good indication as to this vehicle. If it ever comes on sale again, this is the one tank, and you're only going to hear this once, that you should probably actually go out and buy. Yep, I am actually going to endorse going out and buying a premium tank on World of Tanks. This one is blatantly a pay-to-win vehicle, and it is really, really good. And as you get better at the game, it gets even better. So, yeah, just make of that what you will. And, of course, you don't have to go out and spend money. If you don't want to spend money, don't. But if you are going to, then this is probably one of the best vehicles you can pay for, and it probably is going to get removed from the premium tech tree at some point, where you just cannot buy it, and they may not even release it. So hopefully that isn't the case, at least for people that don't own it. But if you do own it, then you know what I'm on about in this video. Feel like it's been a long one, but I just wanted to get it off my chest, showcase that game that was ridiculous, whilst I was earning some silver, and maybe I'll even go for 3 marks and see just how ridiculous the games, or my best game in this vehicle will be, or maybe have we already had it in that game that we had previously. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, and I will try my best to 3 mark it in the near future. Probably won't be any time really, really soon. But yeah, thank you once again, and I hope you join me in the next video coming soon. Goodbye.